So, good morning, everyone. This is the David Lefty Leibowitz from the Empiricist League and our first ever Empiricist League interview series. And we are very happy to have this morning Mr. Lee Billings, author of the great book 5 Billion Years of Solitude. Good morning, Lee.
Good morning, Dave. Good to talk to you. Good to see you this morning.
Yeah, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. This is an exciting moment in the history of the Empiricist League. Really get to talk to some serious science journalists here and get the word out to the people. So I was very honored to and happy to read your book. I guess when it first came out, which has been maybe a year or so, not quite
a little over a year.
A little over a year. Love the book. I know you came and speak at the Empiricist League in one of our more popular talks that we've had, and I know the book's just come out in paperback. Is that right?
Yeah, it came out in October in paperback, and so it's not too late, guys. The holiday season is still in full effect. You'll get some gift cards under the tree this year to Barnes & Noble or Amazon. Go get the book in paperback. Yes.
Awesome. And for those who don't know about the book, can you give a little quick summary of what it's all about?
Sure. Yeah. So the book is about some of the scientists who have been at the forefront of the search for other Earth-like planets around other stars for the past couple of decades. And so it's looking at some of their achievements, some of their stories, their personal stories, where the field came from, how we got to this point where we're on the threshold of potentially finding other Earth-like planets, and maybe where it's going from here, how long we may have to wait until we do find them, if we ever will find them. So it's about that.
Great. And I think that's a topic that's really appealing to a lot of people, and I think it has a kind of a natural appeal to everyone. But I'm curious, in your particular case, it's obviously particularly interesting to you. You've studied this and you follow this and you've written a lengthy book about it. How did you, in particular, get so fascinated by this topic?
Yeah, well, I've always been interested in the topic. I feel like everyone kind of is, and if someone's not really interested in this topic, it either betrays just, I don't know, like kind of a fundamental lack of curiosity that is disturbing, or just some kind of deep fatalism where they just think that it's pointless and we're alone, or that we're never going to find anything out there. So I feel like anyone, you look up at the sky, you can look at all the stars up there and kind of wonder what it's all about. Where are we going? Where do we come from? All those big campfire questions that are timeless. It really ties into all that. So I feel like everyone's interested in it. But for me, I guess it got strong for me when I was given the opportunity to interview some astrophysicists and astronomers who were involved with planet hunting when I was working at Seed magazine back in 2007 and 2006. And I was talking with these folks, and they were so excited about what they were doing and what the future held in the next 10 years. And the more I talked to them, the more that excitement kind of rubbed off on me. And I just thought, hey, this could be like this really, we're in the midst of this, you hear about these, you hear the phrase scientific revolution bandied about a whole lot when you're studying science, the history of science. You think about things like Maxwell figuring out his equations, or Einstein figuring out general relativity, or Hubble figuring out that the universe was expanding and stuff like that. And I felt like it was one of those moments that we were experiencing with all these people looking for other Earth-like planets and finding all these other planetary systems. So I guess I just saw that, and I thought it was a real thing. It wasn't just my bias and my interest in science fiction and stuff that was making me think that it was real. And so I said, well, hey, let's really start trying to figure out what makes these people tick and what they want to do and accomplish and achieve. So I guess that's kind of how I got into it. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm curious. You mentioned those fatalists who are mired in negativity. They think we're never going to find anything out there. Based on the conversations that you've had, I mean, the universe is so vast. I mean, is it really likely? I mean, how likely is it that we're going to find Earth-like? I know there are Earth-like planets out there, but how likely is it that we're going to find actual intelligent life on those planets, in your view?
Well, you can answer that question only statistically right now. And that's just because we don't have enough data about what actually exists around nearby stars. So I think you could say something like, if the nearest intelligent civilization that we could detect, whatever intelligence means and whatever civilization means, in those contexts, these are words that really have very anthropocentric, earthbound definitions, and so consequently, we have to be careful when we say these things. But if the next civilization or next intelligent civilization is in another galaxy, in the Andromeda galaxy, for instance, then yes, like the chances are very low that we'll ever see them or find them or interact with them in any way. But if they're around one of the nearest 100 or several hundred stars, it's not inconceivable to think about us having some kind of exchange or even knowing that they're there. So it's really this question of just how far away they might be. I mean, given how big the universe is, we can't be alone, it seems like. It's almost a statistical certainty to say that. So the question is how far away they are. And again, we can only answer this question or address this question statistically right now because we just don't have a good sense. We don't have that census, that galactic planetary census of even our local neighborhood. Mm-hmm. There could be Earth-like planets, an Earth-like planet, a mirror of Earth within 10 light years of here very easily. And we don't know whether or not that's the case right now because we haven't looked hard enough. So it's really tough to answer that question until we actually have the fundamental data of what exists and we've kind of mapped out the star systems around us.
Right. So one of the things that we love about science at the Empiricist League, and we love to participate in when we can at the Empiricist League, is the shattering of illusions that humans have held about themselves for hundreds of, not thousands of years. And I'm talking about things like Galileo and the heliocentric theory and Darwin's theory of natural selection. If we were to go and find intelligent life on other planets, what implications do you think that has about our notions of self-importance, about our centrality in the universe, things that have been kind of core to a lot of ways of thinking in human culture throughout history? Does this change the way we should be thinking about ourselves and the world?
It's a huge question. I guess, I mean, there's so many different ways to break it down. I would say if we find life, obviously that just any kind of life at all, single unicellular pond scum or something, I think that does suggest to us that that maybe we are pretty special, even though, because you think if we find life, that means we're not special. But what if we find life everywhere but intelligence nowhere? And that would suggest, wow, something really weird happened on Earth, and even though the universe is alive, only our planet and only our solar system from where we've looked sustains this strange thing we call intelligence and consciousness and all that. So there's that kind of answer you could give, in which case we seem pretty special. If we find intelligent life, I think it almost depends to some degree on if we find them or if they find us, because and how we find each other. So if we have some kind of Independence Day, the day the Earth stood still, sci-fi Hollywood scenario where huge interstellar ships like land on the White House lawn or suddenly appear in skies above our cities, that would be obviously very humbling and very scary, and would suggest that the intelligence out there that we now know exists is much more powerful and capable than we are, and that would suggest that hey, we're not that special. Maybe we actually kind of suck in the big scheme of things. You could see other scenarios where maybe we get some kind of faint radio transmission, not even something beamed at us, but just kind of an omnidirectional pulse that's sent out from there's all kinds of scenarios you could play up where the power dynamic would be very different and the location would be very different depending on how far away we are from them, spatially or developmentally. So it's a really complicated question, and the answer, obviously, I think, is of great importance for us and our maybe our long-term future. If you do find a lot of other civilizations out there, a lot of other intelligences, maybe if you can't even talk to them, so we're not talking about things like information exchange, or they're going to beam us some kind of Encyclopedia Galactica that we can then build our whole civilization around in our future. But if you don't get that kind of communication, but you can tell just somehow by leakage radiation or something, or by the gases in some planet's atmosphere that there's probably intelligence there, and you see it everywhere, that could be kind of, on one hand it would say, yes, we're not super special, and once again, the Copernican revolution is playing out. But it would also suggest that maybe we do have a more positive future than I think a lot of the 20th and 21st centuries, the events of the 20th and 21st centuries have suggested that we have. Mm-hmm. You look at things like global thermonuclear war, climate change, economic collapse, ecological degradation, these things that are global scale problems that we confront increasingly on our planet. And if we see all these other intelligences out there on other stars, on other planets, and they're seeming to do just fine, and we see a lot of them, that would suggest that, hey, civilizations could probably last a fairly long time. They don't just snuff themselves out the instant they become detectable to the wider cosmos. I don't know if that's true. That's just one scenario. Yeah. I think it's quite possible that in fact we would look out there, we wouldn't find a lot. And if we did find something, it could potentially suggest, the opposite, that actually maybe our time is limited, and most intelligent civilizations end up, for one reason or another, burning out and fading away before they stretch out to reach other stars and things like that.
So I heard you were talking there a little bit about intelligent life, and and some of the technologies they may have evolved over the millennia, and it made me think of a question I was going to ask a little bit later, but I think I'll ask it now. And in preparation for this conversation, I was just surfing around the web a little bit and saw a quote from Stephen Hawking that I think is relevant here. And he said, "We only have to look at ourselves to see how intelligent life might develop into something we wouldn't want to meet." I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that. How cautious should we be about, be careful what you wish for in terms of finding folks like this?
I think we should be very careful. It's one of those questions where I think some people have characterized it as, is it good to shout in a jungle when you don't hear anything? And the context of this is actually that back in the 1960s, when things like the search for extraterrestrial intelligence via big radio telescopes started, these big radio telescopes, which you have to remember, can not only receive signals, but can also beam signals back with their huge dishes. And big, large power sources, were basically the people who had access to those were, governments, militaries, and their high-ranking representatives, august scientists, as it were. Well, now, you can go, there are very large radio telescopes, for instance, in Australia, that you can go rent. You can go pay money and just go use the facility for a day or an hour, and you can beam whenever you want to wherever you want on the sky, as long as it's overhead. So it's a different paradigm now that we're entering, and there have actually been efforts, private efforts, to beam messages to certain nearby stars that are thought to perhaps harbor habitable planets. Mm-hmm. And so some people got really upset about that, this so-called active SETI effort. Active because it's not passive, it's not waiting for things to beam to you, you're instead broadcasting our existence out to the universe. I think that's a little naive to be super worried about that specific effort, but the idea in general that we may not want to attract attention to ourselves because other instances of intelligence could be threatening to us or predatory somehow, it's not one of those things that again, it's not so much that I think that's a certainty, but I think that since it's an uncertainty, we have to take it seriously. So you're talking about other minds, other cultures, other beings for which we really don't have a good sense of what they would be like, what their intentions would be, how they would think. So yeah, you can't just assume that they're going to be benevolent cosmic brothers who just want to, build a campfire and sing Kumbaya with us, right? But at the same time, this kind of gets back into the question of the method of contact and how it would happen. If you imagine a scenario where it is direct contact, or where they come to our planet, or we meet them in our solar system, that is a very, very, very different scenario with a lot more risk, I think, involved with it than if they're around another star or in another galaxy and we're just communicating via beams of light. So yeah, there's a lot of gradations here. But what I was getting at with that is that in the scenario where you are encountering something in your solar system or on your planet that has come from another star, from elsewhere in the galaxy or another galaxy, that naturally implies they have so much more power and capability than we do. Yes, but to get to that spot, to get to that capability, Carl Sagan likes to make this argument that essentially, and other people have made it too, that essentially to get there, to be that powerful, you're going to have to get rid of some of your most base and destructive impulses and behaviors within yourself, because otherwise you will destroy yourself or your planet before you reach the point where you're threatening the natives on some other faraway world. Mm-hmm. And I think it makes really good sense. These are dual-use technologies. The same sorts of things that could get you to another star could also be used to, for instance, destroy a planet. You take something like the size of a school bus and you accelerate it to a significant fraction of the speed of light. And if it hits anything like a planet, for instance, you will destroy all life on that planet. You will effectively destroy the biosphere of that planet just from, again, something the size of a school bus going at a significant fraction of the speed of light. So, these things that we're talking about that are starships are also weapons. So I think that anything that would be able to cross the distances between the stars to threaten us here probably has better things to do than threaten us, unless they're just somehow super sadistic and really actually evil.
Yeah. And given the risks to our own planet that we're facing right now, global warming, catastrophes of various sorts, you often hear or occasionally hear it proposed that we should be colonizing other planets, other Earth-like planets. Do you think this is a realistic approach for us? Should we be looking at these exoplanets not only out of pure kind of scientific interest, but as a potential refuge for the future of mankind?
Yeah, I think it's really silly to say we shouldn't be, because we are on we all experience the past, we know the past, we don't really know the future and what it holds. So I think it's really silly if we're like, well, no, that's stupid for us to look at other planets that could be homes for us. Why would you cut that off? Why would you not at least give that a possibility and take it somewhat seriously? I mean, that said, yeah, the common criticism, I think, of a lot of this work is precisely this notion that, oh, well, you just want to, your head's in the clouds. You're too busy looking up at the stars to look at what's all around you on Earth, and that's foolish and silly because we're never going to get there. I mean, I do actually have a lot of sympathy for that argument because, yeah, I think that my gut says that when we look out there and we look at other star systems and look for other places like this, we aren't going to find a lot of places that look as nice and comforting and welcoming as Earth. I think that Earth is this really crazy cosmic oasis, this blue-green jewel of a planet that we have that is profoundly special. And so, for me, it would be really silly to just say that, yeah, we have to abandon, or we should abandon everything we have here just in favor of going elsewhere. But at the same time, yeah, the sun is a star. Someday it will stop shining. It will burn out. It's probably foolish for us to say that we're going to be around that far in the future, but why should we assume we won't be? Maybe we should just at least give that as a possibility. And if that is a possibility, then we're going to have to find someplace else to live, and Mars isn't going to cut it, right? None of the planets in the solar system will cut it because the sun will have died. So it's a really far off thought. We would essentially have to be as gods to, I think, make all that stuff work. But hey, it is real. That's science. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee. Well, you mentioned earlier that it's kind of around the holiday season now. So our readers out there, perhaps right now, they're facing the choice of buying a new pony or some golf clubs or 5 billion years of solitude. What's your pitch? Why should they pick up your book as opposed to going for the pony?
Well, what I would say is that my book's not for everybody. Maybe I should have said this in the beginning instead of kind of once we were a little deep into it. But I would say that a lot of people, I think, picked up my book when it first came out a year ago, and they thought it was going to be a very different book than what they got. So if you're interested in reading a popular textbook, a popularized, slightly dumbed down textbook, don't pick up my book. It's not what it is. I'm not gonna hold your hand and tell you every single encyclopedic detail about the search for planets, period. I'm not going to do that. That's not what it's about. What I'm going to do, what my book does, is it tells the history and it tells the stories of some of the key players who could be going down in history, whose names could be remembered 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 years from now for the things that they're doing in our lifetimes today. And I'm talking about, not the whole question of, okay, what are exoplanets and how can they form and where do they come from and how can we detect them? I talk about a lot of those things, but it's all filtered through the lens of Earth, of our own planet. So it's really a story of our planet and this moment in time in which we find ourselves, our moment in the sun. And what are we going to do with it? Are we going to just go out there? Are we going to find these little planets and really get a sense of our cosmic context and learn whether or not we're special and learn how we may be able to treat our own planet and each other better? Or are we going to not do that? Are we going to kind of succumb to all the decaying forces that we see all around us all the time, entropy and things like that express themselves in the decay and decline of our institutions and ourselves, personally and on large scales? So that's a little deep, but all I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to tell a story. Yeah. I'm not trying to just educate and give you a popular textbook. It really is a story. So if that's not your thing, if you really just want to read a textbook, go do that. Don't read my book. But if you want a good story, check mine out.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Lee. For everyone out there, I love the book. I highly recommend it. It's strongly endorsed by the Empiricist League. Again, it's 5 Billion Years of Solitude by Lee Billings. And thank you very much for your time, Lee. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David. It's great talking to you as always.